Hi, and welcome to Monrovia Real Estate. Today, I am your host, Amir Elahi, and today we're going to be talking with an expert in housing counseling. My guest today is Shonda Williams. Welcome to the show, Shonda.
Thank you for having me.
I am so happy. We've been trying to really explore all of the details of the foreclosure crisis and what families can do to get assistance in saving their homes. If at all possible. And so as an expert in housing counseling, we certainly are glad to have you here today. Give us an idea of what you do.
Well, I work in the nonprofit arena. Currently, I am a counselor for a nonprofit. Also, I am a consultant for a national nonprofit. I've been in the industry almost 25 years. Majority of my experience is on the mortgage lending side, and then just recently crossing over to the foreclosure prevention counseling side.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about your background, especially coming from mortgage lending into nonprofit counseling.
Sure.
How did you do that, and what is that transition like?
Sure, I worked for a national mortgage company for 12 years and another national mortgage company for 11 years. And when the mortgage industry crashed, they closed my division. I took a little time off and I went to a nonprofit to actually donate my services with my mortgage background, and I've been there ever since.
The major differences between kind of and I'm assuming that you were in origination and now you're doing kind of the foreclosure prevention piece. Describe to us what that entails and what you actually do now.
Actually, it goes hand in hand because with the knowledge from the mortgage perspective, when a homeowner comes to me for counseling, I'm able to understand some of the products that they were positioned in. We all know that that was a major crisis and that's why the mortgage industry crashed. The long arms and the negams, and I'm able to explain to them why they're in the position that they're in, and so it kind of works out together.
Okay, and when you actually are doing the counseling, one of the things that I've been focusing on as a part of this series is that there is an opportunity for folks to get help free of charge.
Right.
Could you kind of expound on that?
Absolutely. One of our initiatives is Scam Alert, and that is basically an initiative to direct the homeowners to a nonprofit, which means that the services that we actually offer them is free. A lot of the homeowners that come to us are very wounded. They've paid thousands and thousands of dollars to modification companies and attorneys with no assistance. And as a result, sometimes they lose their home. With the nonprofit organization, most of the institutions have partnered up with us. We have direct contacts with not only Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, all of the national servicers, where we can get the homeowner in a position to be reviewed properly.
And you mentioned something about the National Scam Alert, and I know that was launched. I was actually at that launch a couple years ago in Los Angeles with the mayor of LA and the county supervisors were there. But one of the things that also happened was that there was a law passed about taking fees up front.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that law does?
The latter part, right. The latter part of 2010 is where they finally discovered that homeowners were being scammed upon. Like I said previously, a lot of these attorneys were basically taking the homeowners' money without rendering any type of service.
And they were using the president's sound bites.
Yes.
And collecting this money up front.
Yes.
And then they were not rendering the actual services, and so
right.
What happens? Lots of folks then saw that this was, or assumed that it was endorsed by the president.
Absolutely.
And so that's how the law came about, and what does it actually entail?
Well, if you look at some of the statistics and a lot of articles where it's really a felony for any attorney to collect any funds up front for the loan modification process. A lot of the attorneys are, basically the homeowners are, giving the right for the attorney to speak on their behalf. The attorneys are telling them not to contact the servicer, but no services are ever being rendered. So they went very aggressively after these attorneys and these modification companies. You may still see some advertisement, But at this point, the servicers are directing the homeowners to a HUD certified counseling center where they can go on the HUDgov.com, put in their zip code, and they'll find a HUD counseling nonprofit center that will be able to assist them.
And assist them free of charge.
Free of charge.
Can anyone guarantee a modification?
No one can guarantee you a modification. That's where the education comes in. A lot of times homeowners are not realizing that they have a servicer and then they have an investor. At the end of the day, the investor is the only one that can write a modification. No attorney, no modification company, no nonprofit organization, no counselor. You can go to large events within your city and they will guarantee you a modification. The loan modification can only be approved by your investor. That's it. The servicer cannot even approve a modification.
Okay. And when you say that, then that means that a lot of times then people were being misled by being promised that they could actually guarantee a modification for basically the right amount. And so one of the things that I've always said is if you're going to pay $2, $3, $4, I've heard even as high as $8,000 for somebody to guarantee a modification, you could actually take that money and use it to help make your mortgage payment.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of the modification companies and or attorneys have gotten really savvy, because I saw one contract where the homeowner actually was making the mortgage payment to the attorney, and the attorney never made any type of mortgage payment. And then they were basically very close to foreclosure.
Okay.
So it's very interesting.
All right. So the overarching message is beware of scams, and nobody can promise you. I know that they had some. Nobody can promise you a modification. The other one, I thought maybe you can help me out with this, because there were 3 or 4 telltale signs that it was a scam. One was if anybody told you to stop making your mortgage payments. Also, if they were going to negotiate for you and forbid you from talking to your servicer.
Exactly.
Was another one that was really a telltale sign of a scam.
Signing over a power of attorney.
Right.
I've seen that one. And I've also seen where some of these attorneys have created some type of deed of trust where you're lowered to basically give your property over to this attorney for a certain period of time, which is what they're saying. And they record the deed of trust, and then at some point your property is no longer yours.
Okay, so they're getting more creative and more crafty.
Yes.
Now, let me just say some of the things that I've seen recently after the law has been passed, that people also have to be aware now that people are charging for quote unquote classes and services up front, which is kind of skirting the law is what they're doing.
Right.
And so people have to be aware of that. So they're saying, no, we're not promising you a modification. We're not guaranteeing you a modification. But if you pay the $3,000 for classes and services, then we'll really help you get a modification.
Right.
So that's something that has been going on now for the last several months that you're starting to see a lot more of as people, again, try to look at ways to get around the actual law.
Right. And basically under your HUD certified counseling homeownerships, they offer free classes in terms of foreclosure prevention. Also, a lot of them have where the servicers do work out of their office, and they can do a one-on-one with the counselor as well as the servicer. And then that way the servicer that they meet with or the individual that they meet with will be their contact going forward.
Number one challenge that I hear from people that I talk to on a frequent basis is that I can't get anybody on the phone.
Right.
What should a person do then if that is the case?
Well, that's why they have the home preservation centers. I know Chase has several in Southern California. Bank of America just opened up, I believe, 3 in Southern California. They're still going to be expanding. The good thing about that is that it's a face-to-face and it's a one-on-one. So in the branch centers, the homeowner, if they get desperate enough, have the ability to basically go into that office and meet with the individual that they met with, one of the advisors.
Okay.
And then that way they're not on the phone, on the 800 numbers, calling different places. As you know, servicing is really big. Sometimes you can get someone out of the country depending on when you call.
That's
Sometimes
right.
you can get another state. Depending on what time it is, you may get six different people with six different answers. So with the home preservation centers, they have the ability to walk in as if they were walking into a retail bank.
Okay.
And meet with an individual.
Right. And then on that same subject, if a person has a loan that is not with a major lending institution, and they may not have the opportunity to meet face to face with their servicer, then what should they do?
Well, basically what I encourage is that I can typically get the homeowner at a 60% position of a good review.
Okay.
Once we do that, obviously with our volume, I can't call once a week. That's the responsibility of the homeowner. Once we put the package together, get it over to the right department, put it in a loss mitigation look at, they have the ability to contact them every day if necessary or every other day depending on the triage. That's something that I put on the homeowner, but I try to get them 60% there. If there's
Okay.
any, yeah.
Can you give me the top 5 responsibilities that every homeowner who is either looking for modification or facing foreclosure should really do? What is their responsibility? Because one of the things that I see is people who have just taken their whole entire future and put it in the hands of an attorney or put it in the hands of someone who's promised them a modification, and they wait and say, well, this person was supposed to help me, and then of course the sale date comes up and nothing has happened, and then they say, well, I lost my house because this person didn't help me. So talk to me about the responsibilities for the homeowner.
The first responsibility of the homeowner is number one, to seek the assistance. When you know that there's going to be a foreseeable issue with you making the mortgage payment, if you're already behind, first of all, seek out the help. Normally they will direct you to a HUD certified counselor. The responsibility of the HUD certified counselor is to give their expectation of the homeowner and the expectation of the counselor. So what I typically tell the homeowner is, I will definitely get you where you need to be, but your responsibility is to call. If you get antsy, if you need, if you feel desperate enough, you can call every day, 5 days, 6 days a week. If it's that important to you, someone's gonna, pick up the phone and help you. The other responsibility of the homeowner is month to month, the servicers will ask for updated documentation. That's the homeowner's responsibility to get it faxed over. Normally it's your paycheck stubs or your bank statements. They're gonna ask for that every month until they render a decision. If for any reason you don't render those documents, they're gonna kick you out of the modification process. Sometimes homeowners will say, well, did you fax it over? Well, typically the servicer will be in contact with the homeowner. It's very seldom that they will be in contact with the counselor. So any documentation or correspondence that you get from the servicer, if you don't understand it, then contact your HUD certified counselor and go over it and have them, fax it with you. But that's the importance. Number one is to call for status, and number two is to definitely open up your correspondence and make sure that you're adhering to their conditions.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. And I think that's going to help a lot of people, because then the responsibility is placed back on the actual homeowner to say, this is your house.
This is your house.
And you are responsible even though you're seeking help. And one of the things that you also mentioned was that when you actually seek the HUD, the assistance of a HUD certified counseling agency, the other thing that, in fact, let me go back to that particular thought, and that is, where is it that you can find the HUD certified counseling agency?
Normally on www.hud.gov.
Okay.
Okay, and so you just put in your area code, your zip code, and it will pull up the local HUD counseling center in your area.
Okay, and so those HUD counseling centers then are not charging for the services.
There's
and
no
are not
charge.
charging. Okay,
There's no charge.
that's an awesome thing. I think that, I don't know if we can get that word out enough,
Right.
that you don't have to pay someone to actually assist you.
Right.
And I think that becomes the difference. I think what people have gotten is that when they get desperate, then they start to say, oh my gosh, I can't handle this, you do it for me.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of people get taken in the scams.
Especially when you have the Freddie Macs and the Fannie Mae's reaching out to the HUD certified counseling centers, the nonprofit organizations. That's huge, because at some point we can jump over the servicer and go directly to your investor.
Okay.
So Freddie Mac has committed and Fannie Mae has committed to the nonprofit world. So if a homeowner comes in and their investor is actually Freddie Mac, some of the nonprofit centers are what you call Freddie Mac help centers. And so if there's anything, again, that's on a high triage level, we can jump over the servicer, whether it be B of A or Citibank or Wells Fargo, and go directly through Freddie Mac to, perhaps stop your sell date to see where you are in the process, if you're even in the process. And then if we have to start the process over, we do have the ability to submit directly to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae.
Talk to me about California. What has the state of California done? I know recently that the state was awarded a large sum of
$2 billion. $2 billion. It's a great program. It's definitely an alternative from the Making Home Affordable. It is money that was allocated to California to assist the homeowners who are delinquent, who've lost a lot of equity in their property, who basically needs to reinstate some of their arrearage if they're 8 to 10 months past due, and they will allocate a certain amount. I believe it's $15,000 to bring your arrearage current. They also have a transition program for those who just absolutely need to transition out of the home.
Okay.
It's basically done through the nonprofit.
And again, so the nonprofit HUD Housing Counseling Agencies.
Yes, there were a couple of nonprofits here in Southern California that were picked for that program. Not all nonprofits are able to participate in the program.
Okay, and we can call names for those. So do you know who they are?
I know Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services in Ontario definitely is a part of it. And with that, they actually have the ability to submit it to another nonprofit, which is Springboard. And from there, the file is underwritten and determined whether it's approved or not. Okay.
And so I want to talk a little bit more in detail, because the Keep Your Home California was really the $2 billion, although it sounds like a lot of money. We know that just with the crisis, the state of the crisis in California is not going to help as many people that need it.
Right.
But let's talk about probably the last one that you talked about, and that is the transition. So if a person goes through the process with a HUD-approved housing counseling agency and they are not able to get an approved modification, what are their options at that point?
If they're not able to get an approved modification?
Right.
Well, it all depends. It depends on if the homeowner started the process prior to coming to the nonprofit. So what we typically do is, for example, if they were declined and they did it on their own, or they hired an attorney, what we do